They were trusted, respected, wore the badge with pride. But beneath the polished uniforms and sworn oaths were secrets, obsessions, and deadly intentions. When a murder rocks a community, people look to the police for answers. But what happens when the one behind the crime is the cop? When the line between law and lawlessness isn't just blurred, it's shattered. This is the dark side of justice. Number 1. Taylor Wright. Born in 1981 in Florida, Taylor Wright was known as a hardworking private investigator and former police officer. She had a reputation for being dedicated and fiercely loyal, not just in her professional life but in her friendships as well. But sometimes, the people closest to us are the ones who bring about our downfall. Taylor's story was no exception. She had a passion for justice and spent years in law enforcement. After leaving the police force, she transitioned into private investigative work, focusing on background checks and missing persons cases. Outside of work, Taylor cherished time with her family and had a tight-knit circle of friends. One of those friends was Ashley MacArthur. At first glance, Ashley seemed like any other friend, outgoing, charming, and seemingly trustworthy. She had been a part of Taylor's inner circle for years. But beneath her friendly facade lay a dark secret that would eventually lead to a deadly betrayal. Taylor was going through a difficult divorce and turned to Ashley for help. In a display of trust, she gave Ashley $34,000, money intended for the divorce settlement. It was meant to be temporary. But when Taylor asked for the money back, something sinister began to unfold. Taylor, growing anxious, started pressing Ashley to return the money. What should have been a straightforward conversation spiraled into something far more dangerous. On a day in August 2017, Ashley lured Taylor to a secluded family property. It was framed as a peaceful setting where they could talk, just the two of them, away from distractions. But Taylor had no idea that she was walking into a trap. Once she arrived, Ashley pulled out a gun and shot Taylor in the back of the head, executing her in cold blood. Then she buried Taylor's body in a shallow grave on the property, trying to erase all evidence. But Ashley couldn't erase everything. Technology began to speak. Surveillance footage showed Ashley arriving alone at the property. Taylor, seen leaving her house earlier, was never seen again. Phone records revealed a string of calls between the two women that day, calls that painted a picture of betrayal and premeditation. Despite Ashley's attempts to cover up the crime, investigators pieced together her movements. The truth began to unravel. In court, prosecutors described Ashley as a calculating murderer who killed her best friend over money. Her defense team claimed self-defense, but the evidence was overwhelming. Key witnesses testified about Ashley's financial troubles and Taylor's demand for repayment. The jury saw through the lies. After just a few hours of deliberation, Ashley MacArthur was found guilty of first-degree murder. In December 2019, she was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. A once trusted friend was now a convicted killer. Taylor Wright's family was left to mourn a daughter, sister, and friend, betrayed by someone she trusted most. Her tragic death stands as a painful reminder of the dangers of misplaced trust and the dark lengths some will go to for money. Number 2. Stephanie Lazarus. Born on December 24, 1960 in California, Stephanie Lazarus was a respected detective with the Los Angeles Police Department. She was known for her dedication to the law and rose through the ranks to become a homicide detective, someone entrusted with solving violent crimes. But behind her badge was a personal life marked by jealousy and obsession. In the early 1980s, Lazarus had been romantically involved with John Ruetten. But when John fell in love with and married a vibrant, accomplished nurse named Sherry Rasmussen, Lazarus couldn't let go. Sherry, born February 21, 1960, was a brilliant nurse, beloved by those around her. She and John married in 1985 and began a life together in the San Fernando Valley. But that new life came to a horrifying end in February 1986. Sherry was found murdered in the home she shared with John. She had been shot multiple times. The scene suggested a botched burglary. But something didn't sit right. There was a crucial clue, a bite mark left on Sherry's body. But in 1986, DNA technology wasn't advanced enough to make the connection. Decades passed. The case went cold, until 2009, when a cold case unit re-examined the evidence and Lazarus's name surfaced. Investigators discovered her past relationship with John and recovered DNA from the bite mark. The DNA matched Lazarus. The obsessive ex-girlfriend who once wore a badge had finally been unmasked. In 2012, Stephanie Lazarus was arrested for Sherry Rasmussen's murder. During the trial, prosecutors argued that she killed out of jealousy and used her knowledge as a police officer to conceal her crime. Despite her denials, the DNA told a different story. After several days of deliberation, the jury found Lazarus guilty of first-degree murder. She was sentenced to 27 years to life in prison. Her conviction rocked the LAPD and reminded the world that even those sworn to protect the law can become its violators. For Sherry's family, it brought long-awaited justice, but the trauma of losing her in such a brutal way still lingers. Number 3. Antoinette Frank. Born on August 30, 1971 in New Orleans, Louisiana, Antoinette Frank seemed destined for a life in law enforcement. In 1992, she joined the New Orleans Police Department and quickly rose through the ranks. She was young, ambitious, and seemingly committed to public service. But beneath the uniform was someone capable of betrayal beyond comprehension. Frank became romantically involved with Rogers Lacaze, a known felon. Together they formed a deadly partnership. In 1995, Frank and Lacaze concocted a plan to rob the Kim On restaurant, a family-owned Vietnamese restaurant where Frank's fellow officer, Ronald Williams, worked security. Frank had a key and insider knowledge. She knew exactly how to carry out the crime. On March 4, 1995, Frank and Lacaze executed their plan. They entered the restaurant, and in a shocking act of violence, shot and killed Officer Ronald Williams. But they didn't stop there. Trung Vu and Phuong Vu, members of the family that owned the restaurant, were also gunned down. 3 lives taken in cold blood. After the murders, Frank returned to the crime scene in uniform, pretending to respond to the emergency. But a surviving witness identified her as one of the shooters. The investigation quickly unraveled her lies. Evidence and witness testimony confirmed her direct role in the murders. Lacaze was arrested and turned on Frank, revealing the depths of their deadly conspiracy. Frank was charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder. The trial revealed chilling details about her greed, deception, and willingness to betray not only the public trust, but her fellow officer. In 1997 she was convicted and sentenced to death. She remains on death row at Louisiana State Penitentiary. Her case shook the New Orleans Police Department and left a permanent scar on the city. For the Vu family and Ronald Williams's loved ones, the pain endures. The story of Antoinette Frank is a haunting reminder that even those in uniform can commit the most unimaginable crimes. Number 4. Officer Mario Theodore. Mario Theodore White was born on January 4, 1980, in Birmingham, Alabama. A respected officer with the Birmingham Police Department, White had a reputation for being a dedicated and hard-working law enforcement professional. However, despite his commitment to the force, White's personal life was complicated and played a pivotal role in the tragic events that unfolded in 2020. White had been romantically involved with Alfreda Janapil Fluker, a fellow officer in the Birmingham Police Department, for several years. But unbeknownst to Fluker, White had also developed a romantic relationship with Kenesha Nicole Fuller, a 43-year-old woman. Fuller and White's affair would prove to be the catalyst for a deadly confrontation, ultimately leading to the tragic murder of Kenesha Fuller. White's romantic entanglements with both Fluker and Fuller created a volatile and increasingly dangerous situation. While he maintained a long-term relationship with Fluker, he secretly began seeing Fuller, which led to a growing sense of jealousy and tension. Fluker, aware of the affair, began to exhibit signs of emotional distress and possessiveness over White, which would later fuel her actions. On August 21, 2020, Fluker tracked White to Germania Park using a mobile phone app, discovering him there with Kenesha Fuller. This revelation set the stage for an explosive and tragic event. What followed was a fit of rage from Fluker, who arrived at the park and opened fire on the couple in a blind moment of jealousy. On the evening of August 21, 2020, Fluker confronted Mario White and Kenesha Fuller at Germania Park. After tracking White's location through a mobile app, she discovered the two together in an unmarked police vehicle. In a fit of rage, Fluker fired more than 15 rounds into the vehicle, fatally striking Kenesha Fuller. White, who was seated in the driver's seat, was not injured but was in shock after witnessing Fluker's violent actions. As the tragic events unfolded, White was left in an impossible position. While he witnessed the crime, he initially misled authorities about what had occurred. In the hours following the shooting, White falsely claimed that unknown assailants had carried out the attack on him and Fuller, possibly in an effort to protect his own involvement in the volatile love triangle. It wasn't until the police uncovered further evidence and connected Fluker to the crime that White came forward with the truth. He admitted that Alfreda Fluker was the shooter and assisted investigators in locating and arresting her. While Mario White was not criminally charged, his actions were central to the unfolding investigation. His false statements initially misled authorities, complicating the case and delaying Fluker's arrest. However, once White acknowledged Fluker's role in the shooting, the case quickly moved toward closure. Although White was not prosecuted for his involvement, his role in the crime raised questions about his accountability in the events that led to the shooting. Some members of the public and law enforcement felt that White's decision to mislead investigators for a time only deepened the tragedy. The incident left Mario White emotionally and mentally scarred. He was forced to deal with the fallout of his personal relationships, particularly the role he played in the tragic death of Kenesha Fuller. The affair and its deadly consequences would forever alter White's life and career. Though White wasn't charged criminally, he would be forever linked to the murder, not as the perpetrator but as a significant figure in the chain of events that led to Kenesha Fuller's death. His failure to immediately disclose the truth caused frustration within the community, but it also served as a reminder of the complex and often dangerous intersections of personal and professional lives. Number 5. Alfreda Janapil Fluker. Alfreda Janapil Fluker was born on January 10, 1985, in Birmingham, Alabama. A dedicated public servant, she served as an officer with the Birmingham Police Department for 15 years. Fluker was well known for her work ethic and commitment to the job, working alongside her partner, Officer Mario White. However, beneath her badge she struggled with personal issues, including jealousy and a sense of betrayal, which would ultimately lead her to commit a shocking and brutal crime. Fluker's partner, Mario White, had been romantically involved with Kenesha Nicole Fuller, a 43-year-old woman. Fluker, who had also been in a romantic and professional partnership with White, discovered the affair. The strain between the officers escalated, leading to a tragic and fatal encounter in 2020. Fluker's personal life had taken a toll on her professional one, particularly her tumultuous relationship with White. She had been in a long-term relationship with White, both in and out of the police department, but his affair with Fuller stirred a deep jealousy and anger in Fluker. Despite their shared career in law enforcement, tensions had been brewing between the two women, culminating in Fluker's growing obsession and suspicion regarding White's relationship with Fuller. Fluker was known to use a mobile phone app to track White's movements, and it was this app that ultimately led her to Germania Park on August 2020. She had learned through the app that White was with Fuller, which set the stage for a violent confrontation that would forever change the lives of all involved. On August 21, 2020, Fluker's jealousy and rage culminated in a deadly confrontation. She tracked Officer Mario White using a mobile app and discovered he was with Kenesha Nicole Fuller in an unmarked police vehicle at Germania Park in Birmingham. Upon seeing them together, Fluker's emotions reached a boiling point, and in a fit of rage she confronted the couple. Fluker, armed with her department-issued firearm, approached the vehicle and, without warning, opened fire. She fired more than 15 rounds into the car, striking Kenesha Fuller, who was sitting in the passenger seat. White, who was also in the vehicle, was unharmed but was left in shock as Fluker's violent actions unfolded. Fuller, who had no opportunity to defend herself, was fatally struck by several of the bullets. Fluker's actions were not only reckless but deeply personal, as she executed the crime driven by jealousy and a sense of betrayal. After firing, she fled the scene, leaving Fuller's lifeless body behind. Fluker then went into hiding, but the evidence against her was soon uncovered. As investigators pieced together the details of the crime, it quickly became clear that Fluker had intentionally tracked White and Fuller to the park with the goal of confronting them. Surveillance footage, phone records, and witness statements confirmed that Fluker had been the perpetrator. The investigation revealed that Fluker's motive stemmed from a combination of personal animosity toward Fuller and jealousy over White's infidelity. Fluker was arrested and charged with capital murder for the death of Kenesha Nicole Fuller, and attempted murder for firing on White. In the trial, the prosecution presented evidence of Fluker's jealousy and rage, pointing out the premeditated nature of the crime. Witnesses testified to Fluker's violent outbursts and erratic behavior leading up to the incident. In February 2023, after a detailed trial, Fluker was convicted of capital murder and attempted murder. The jury delivered a guilty verdict, and Fluker was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Number 6. Sophie M. Sophie M., a prison officer working for the UK Prison Service, was considered a dedicated member of the prison system. She had been employed for several years and was trusted to maintain order and discipline within the prison environment. Born in the United Kingdom in the mid-1990s, Sophie was drawn to a career in law enforcement, likely driven by a desire to help maintain order and security in the country's correctional facilities. However, she would later make decisions that would result in her downfall. Sophie's descent into criminality began when she formed a relationship with an inmate, Jediah Clark. Over time, she became more deeply involved with Clark and was persuaded to become his accomplice in smuggling illicit drugs into the prison. These drugs, synthetic cannabinoids known as spice, were highly addictive and dangerous. Sophie used her position to carry out the illegal plan, soaking puzzle book pages in spice to avoid detection. The operation grew to be quite profitable, worth around £130,000 in total. However, an investigation by the Eastern Region Special Operations Unit eventually exposed the entire scheme. Sophie was caught, charged, and later pleaded guilty to conspiracy to convey prohibited articles into prison. In 2024, she was sentenced to 2 years and 11 months in prison. Number 7. Officer Paula Atwood-Ree. Born in 1963 in Wales, Paula Atwood-Ree dedicated the majority of her adult life to law enforcement. A respected officer with South Wales Police, she was known for her discipline, professionalism, and commitment to duty. Colleagues viewed her as reliable and deeply committed to public service. But after retirement, the image of a trusted officer gave way to something darker. Atwood-Ree became embroiled in a long-standing legal dispute with her elderly neighbors, Christopher and Jacqueline Teague. While the exact nature of the disagreement remains unclear, tensions steadily escalated over time. As the Teagues aged and became increasingly vulnerable, Atwood-Ree, perhaps fueled by frustration, mental decline, or suppressed rage, abandoned all semblance of restraint. In 2022, Atwood-Ree crossed a line no one imagined she would. Armed with an assortment of weapons, knives, a shovel, a metal pole, and even a cattle prod, she forcibly entered the Teagues' home. The attack that followed was brutal and sustained. Both victims suffered severe, life-altering injuries. The sheer ferocity of the assault left first responders stunned and the community in disbelief. But Atwood-Ree's violent outburst did not end there. During her arrest, she assaulted one of the responding officers, further amplifying the seriousness of her crimes. Following a thorough investigation, Atwood-Ree was charged with multiple counts, including attempted murder, aggravated burglary, and assault on an emergency worker. Her trial exposed a harrowing portrait of a former protector-turned-predator. The prosecution emphasized the calculated nature of her assault and the vulnerability of her victims. In 2023, she was sentenced to 6 years and 2 months in prison. The verdict sparked mixed reactions. Some argued her background warranted a harsher penalty, while others believed her prior service was weighed fairly in sentencing. The Teagues, elderly and physically devastated by the attack, faced a long and difficult recovery. Their sense of safety, once taken for granted, was shattered. Paula Atwood-Ree's transformation from trusted officer to violent offender became a chilling example of how internalized rage and unresolved conflict can explode into unthinkable violence, even from those once sworn to protect. Her story stands as a reminder that authority and uniform do not make one immune to corruption, mental deterioration, or moral collapse. Number 8. Officer Stephanie Heaps. Before her name was etched into headlines as a symbol of betrayal, Stephanie Heaps had built a respectable career across 2 law enforcement institutions, the HM Prison Service and the Greater Manchester Police. Born and raised in the UK, Heaps had once been trusted to guard society's most dangerous individuals behind bars, and later to enforce the law on the streets. While working at HMP Forest Bank, a Category B men's prison in Salford, Heaps gained experience handling high-risk inmates. But behind the secure walls of the prison, she made a decision that would derail her life and her career. She began a covert, inappropriate relationship with Leon Ramsden, a life-sentenced inmate who had brutally stabbed 42-year-old Paul Fennell to death in 2005. There was no singular physical victim in this case of corruption, but the betrayal of public trust and the undermining of institutional integrity made society itself the victim. The suspect, Heaps, was not coerced or blackmailed. Her decisions were deliberate, calculated, and maintained over several years. Ramsden, the inmate she fell for, was manipulative and dangerous. Yet Heaps blurred the line between her duty and personal desires, allowing herself to be entangled in a secret affair with a convicted murderer. After leaving her position as a prison officer, Stephanie Heaps joined Greater Manchester Police, a move that only increased her access to sensitive intelligence. Rather than severing ties with Ramsden, she deepened their connection, communicating with him via illicit phones smuggled into the prison and maintaining encrypted contact channels. She used her new role to leak confidential police information, some of which pertained to ongoing investigations that Ramsden and his associates may have had interest in. Most shockingly, she withheld action on a domestic abuse suspect because of that individual's affiliation with Ramsden. The investigation revealed that Heaps had abused her position multiple times, accessing police databases without authorization and visiting Ramsden in prison under false pretenses. Digital forensic teams, surveillance footage, and phone data created a damning trail that exposed the full extent of her misconduct. In 2022, Stephanie Heaps was charged with misconduct in public office, a serious crime under UK law. In court, she pleaded guilty, and the judge described her betrayal as a shocking breach of public trust. The court emphasized that her actions jeopardized not only her career, but also police investigations and public safety. She was sentenced to 4 years and 3 months in prison, a punishment that reflected both the gravity of her corruption and the deep damage done to institutional credibility. The sentencing of Stephanie Heaps stunned both the prison service and police force. It was a sobering reminder that some officers, even after switching roles within the justice system, can still fall prey to personal weaknesses and criminal choices. The case sparked internal reviews on how law enforcement agencies monitor officer conduct, especially for those with prior connections to high-risk environments like prisons. More broadly, Heaps' case exposed the dangers of unchecked power, emotional manipulation, and blurred ethical boundaries. Her story, though dramatic, is not an isolated tale. The next case highlights how similar betrayals can happen even within elite units of law enforcement. Number 9. Officer Natalie Mottram. Born in 1989, Natalie Mottram would rise through the ranks of British law enforcement, eventually landing a high-trust position with the North West Regional Organised Crime Unit, NROCU, a powerful multi-agency unit responsible for combating major organized crime across northern England. Prior to this role, Mottram served with the Cheshire Police, where she built a strong reputation. Her transfer to NROCU gave her access to high-level intelligence on drug trafficking networks, encrypted criminal communications, and ongoing covert operations. But the weight of that trust would ultimately be too much for her to bear. In this case, the victims weren't individuals, they were the British public law enforcement institutions and the integrity of national investigations. As a sworn officer, Mottram wasn't just expected to uphold the law, she was one of the few trusted to monitor and dismantle criminal syndicates. Instead, she betrayed her oath and acted as an internal informant for an organized crime gang using EncroChat, a heavily encrypted messaging app used by European traffickers and underworld figures. Mottram became a double agent, actively feeding intel to criminals in exchange for protection and trust, if not direct compensation. In 2020, European law enforcement cracked EncroChat, a massive intelligence breakthrough that led to arrests and disruptions in organized crime operations worldwide. But just as British forces prepared to strike, some of the targets seemed to disappear, tipped off and ready. Investigators soon discovered that someone had leaked critical information from inside the operation. Surveillance efforts traced the leak back to Natalie Mottram. She had accessed confidential briefings about the EncroChat operation and warned criminal associates, undermining the entire effort. She wasn't sloppy, she took care to hide her digital tracks. But internal monitoring systems, combined with message analysis, exposed her involvement. In 2022, Natalie Mottram was charged with misconduct in public office, unauthorized disclosure of information, and assisting an organized crime group. Her betrayal was described in court as a catastrophic breach of trust. She pled guilty to the charges and was sentenced to 3 years and 9 months in prison. During sentencing, the judge emphasized that Mottram had sabotaged a major criminal investigation, potentially putting lives at risk and allowing dangerous offenders to escape prosecution. Mottram's fall stunned British law enforcement. Her betrayal revealed how even elite agencies like NROCU could be infiltrated, not by external hackers but from within. The case led to new internal safeguards, including enhanced vetting procedures, digital access audits, and greater scrutiny for those with access to top-tier intelligence. But the damage was done. Criminal groups had evaded justice and a trusted officer had sold out her badge. Natalie Mottram's story is not just about corruption. It's about how easily the line between protector and perpetrator can be crossed when power meets opportunity. Number 10. Officer Lorna Pennycook. Born on March 1, 1986, in Walsall, West Midlands, Lorna Pennycook served as a constable with West Midlands Police, stationed at the Handsworth Division. Her role entrusted her with access to sensitive police databases and intelligence systems. However, between August 2017 and April 2021, Pennycook exploited her position by unlawfully accessing confidential information to aid her boyfriend Anthony Kennedy, a known criminal with 18 prior convictions. Over nearly 4 years, Pennycook conducted unauthorized searches on police systems, retrieving intelligence logs, warrant statuses, and details of ongoing investigations related to Kennedy and his associates. She then leaked this sensitive information to Kennedy, advising him to use burner phones and other tactics to evade law enforcement detection. Her actions directly compromised police operations and undermined public trust in the police force. In March 2023, Pennycook pleaded guilty to misconduct in public office. She resigned from the force in July 2021, shortly after her arrest. On December 12, 2024, she was sentenced to 4 years in prison at Birmingham Crown Court. The court highlighted the severity of her betrayal, emphasizing the risk her actions posed to ongoing investigations and the erosion of public confidence in law enforcement. Pennycook's case is a stark reminder of how personal relationships can lead to breaches of professional duty. Yet, her story is not isolated. In the following case, we examine the actions of Officer Daniel Ameson, who not only betrayed his oath but also orchestrated a criminal enterprise while serving in the police force. Number 11. Officer Daniel Ameson. Daniel Ameson was born on October 15, 1981, in Greater Manchester, England. His early years in law enforcement appeared promising. As a serving officer with the Greater Manchester Police (GMP), he worked in the Roads Policing Unit and later the Intelligence Unit. He was also stationed in the Trafford District, where he cultivated a reputation for being efficient and street-smart. But behind the uniform, Ameson led a secret life that would eventually label him as one of the most corrupt police officers in British history. Ameson wasn't just dabbling in corruption. He was running a full-scale drug operation while actively serving as a police officer. By 2014, he had taken over an illegal cannabis farm previously run by an associate. He used police intelligence to guide his criminal activities, ensuring his grow sites operated under the radar. He even bragged in encrypted chats about being more of a gangster than a copper. Between 2015 and 2016, Ameson set up at least 6 cannabis farms across Greater Manchester. He recruited friends, relatives, and even fellow gym-goers to help manage the enterprise. When he wasn't pretending to chase criminals, he was tending to his crop, investing in hydroponic equipment, and laundering profits through a car leasing company he managed as a side business. While officers were raiding actual criminals, Ameson was using insider knowledge to avoid raids on his own operations. He used GMP's confidential databases to run unauthorized checks on potential threats, rival criminals, and even his own team's activity. He coordinated harvests, sales, and transportation of large quantities of cannabis. Authorities estimate that the cannabis seized from his operations had a street value exceeding £84,000, and he likely profited far more than that during his entire run. What's more shocking is that Ameson carried out much of this criminal behavior while on sick leave for a supposed back injury. Instead of recovering, he was actively expanding his cannabis network. Ameson's downfall came through surveillance and digital forensics. Investigators uncovered encrypted communications, bank transfers, and leases tied to addresses where cannabis was being grown. In one notable raid, police found grow rooms, timer-controlled lighting, fertilizer, and over 600 cannabis plants. Further analysis of his mobile phone revealed incriminating messages and photos of himself smiling in front of grow operations. In December 2017, Daniel Ameson pleaded guilty to conspiracy to produce cannabis and misconduct in public office. During sentencing at Manchester Crown Court, the judge called him a disgrace to the uniform and emphasized the extent of his betrayal. He was sentenced to 6 years in prison, 5 for the drug operation and 1 for abusing his role as a police officer. Daniel Ameson's case sparked widespread criticism of police oversight in the UK. How could an officer with access to sensitive information and internal tools operate as a drug kingpin for so long without detection? His actions eroded public trust and forced GMP to strengthen internal monitoring and audit systems. But even after his imprisonment, Ameson made headlines again. In 2020, he was caught operating a cannabis business from behind bars, once again using smuggled phones to control criminal activity. For the public, it was proof that Ameson wasn't just a corrupt officer. He was a career criminal who used the badge to build an empire. His story isn't the last. Each of these cases reminds us that accountability must apply to everyone regardless of badge or rank. Justice is not just about catching criminals, it's about preventing those with authority from becoming one themselves. If you found this deep dive eye-opening, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more stories that expose the truth behind the badge. And let us know in the comments, which case shocked you the most? Or are there other law enforcement scandals you want us to cover?